Welcome to Monk's Moon Temple. Find a comfortable place to rest. Let your eyes soften, or close them if you wish. Allow the weight of the day, the weight of your thoughts, to settle. You are entering a space of quiet reflection, a sanctuary of words. Here, we are not in a hurry. We are simply present, exploring the landscapes of the heart and mind through timeless wisdom. The voice you will hear is a guide, but the journey is your own. We begin not with complexity, but with a simple, ancient truth, that peace is not a distant destination, but a quality of attention we can cultivate right where we are. Let us begin with a story about attention itself. Imagine a master sculptor, renowned across the lands, who was hired to carve a statue of a lion from a massive block of white marble. The block was delivered to his courtyard. For the first week, the sculptor did not touch his chisel. He simply sat, from dawn until dusk, gazing at the marble. People whispered, "Is he afraid? Has he lost his skill?" He sat, observing how the morning sun glanced off one particular edge, how the afternoon shadow revealed a hidden fissure, how the grain seemed to flow in a certain direction. He was not seeing a block of stone. He was listening to it. He was discovering the lion that was already sleeping within. On the 8th day, he picked up his hammer and chisel. His first strike was not a tentative tap, but a confident, knowing blow that sent a large, unnecessary slab of stone crashing to the ground. He worked with a kind of serene certainty, not forcing his will upon the stone, but collaborating with the form waiting to be revealed. Our minds are often like that block of marble. We perceive ourselves as solid, fixed, and perhaps obscured by the excess, the rough slabs of worry, the hard edges of old habits, the jagged pieces of regret. We try to chip away at ourselves with force, with harsh criticism, with rigid plans. We struggle against our own grain. But the wisdom tradition of Buddhism offers a different approach. It invites us, first, to sit quietly with ourselves. To observe without judgment. To listen to the subtle grain of our own nature. The transformation, the revealing of our true strength and serenity, does not come from violent carving, but from understanding what is essential and what is mere excess. The master sculptor knew that the lion's form was inherent in the stone. His job was to remove everything that was not the lion. Your peace, your clarity, is inherent in you. The practice is a gentle, patient removal of everything that obscures it, the agitation, the clinging, the false stories. This is not a task of adding more, but of kindly letting go. It begins with simple attention, with the courage to sit with the unshaped block of your present experience, and to listen. Now, let's explore this through an original story. In a vast, silent library that existed between waking and dream, there was a single, endless bookshelf. On this shelf sat every thought you have ever had, every feeling you have ever felt, bound into fragile, gossamer volumes. There was a librarian for this place, a gentle being of soft light whose only duty was to maintain order. Most of the time, the library was peaceful. A thought book would gently glow, float off the shelf, open itself to be read, and then return. This was the natural flow of the mind. But one day, a visitor arrived, a version of you, brimming with worry. The moment this worried self entered, a specific cluster of thought books began to vibrate violently. Books titled, "What If?", "Past Mistakes," and "Future Fears" shot from the shelf, flying in a frantic circle around the visitor's head. They opened and closed, their pages rustling in a storm of anxiety. The visitor, overwhelmed, tried to catch them, to slam them shut, to force them back onto the shelf. But each attempt only made them flutter more wildly, tearing their delicate pages. The librarian watched with compassion. After the visitor collapsed in exhaustion, the librarian approached. It did not try to catch the books. Instead, it sat down on the floor amidst the swirling pages and simply breathed. Its calm presence began to affect the air in the library. Slowly, the frantic orbits of the thought books widened. Their fluttering softened. One by one, drawn not by force but by the gravitational pull of stillness, they drifted down, came to rest on the floor, and lay open, their pages settling. The librarian then gently picked up each one, smoothed its pages, and returned it to its proper place on the endless shelf. Order was restored not through battle, but through grounded, peaceful presence. The Buddha taught that our suffering is often like this. We are the worried visitor in the library of our own mind. A thought or feeling arises, anxiety, anger, sadness, and we immediately try to grapple with it, to suppress it, to solve it. We enter into a struggle with a ghost made of paper and ink. This struggle is what amplifies the noise, what creates the storm. The practice of mindfulness is to become the librarian. It is to find the place of calm awareness within that can sit peacefully amidst the swirling thoughts without being swept away, without needing to engage in the frantic chase. The thoughts, when not fought, when met with spacious attention, naturally lose their chaotic energy. They settle. They return to the vast shelf of your mind, which can hold them all without being disturbed. You are not your thoughts. You are the aware space in which they appear and disappear. You are the librarian, not the frantic visitor. Your first task is to remember your true role. This understanding is a cornerstone of the path. It is the first turn of the key. And if this way of being, this gentle remembrance of your own role as the peaceful librarian of your inner world, resonates with you, I warmly invite you to subscribe to Monk's Moon Temple. Your subscription is like lighting a small, steady lamp in this shared sanctuary of understanding, allowing us to continue weaving these tales of wisdom for all who seek a moment of peace. It is a quiet way of saying, this path matters, and together, we walk it. Now, let us continue our journey to another facet of understanding. Let us journey deeper into this landscape of awareness. The librarian, sitting in stillness, does not create the peace of the library. The peace was always the nature of the library itself, merely obscured by frantic activity. In the same way, the still, clear awareness that can witness your thoughts is not something you need to manufacture. It is your fundamental nature. To realize this is to shift from being a prisoner of the weather to becoming the sky that holds it. All weather passes. The sky remains. Now, consider this sky through another story. There was once a great, ancient bell in a temple forgotten by time, nestled high in the mountains. It was cast from a mysterious alloy that gave it a unique property. It would only ring when the sound that touched it was pure, clear, and without force. For centuries, wind howled around it, rain beat upon it, birds pecked at it, and travelers struck it with stones, hoping to hear its legendary tone. But it remained silent, a dull, greenish lump of metal. The common belief was that the bell was broken, or that its story was a myth. One quiet autumn evening, a young monk on a pilgrimage of silence passed through the ruins. Having taken a vow of non-speaking, he communicated only through presence. He sat in meditation near the bell as the sun set. He did not try to make it ring. He simply sat, his own mind growing still, his breath becoming soft and even. In that deep quiet, he began to hum. It was not a song, but a single, sustained, clear note that arose naturally from his diaphragm, a sound of pure, effortless being. It was the note of his own peace. As this gentle hum touched the bell, something miraculous happened. The great bell began to vibrate in sympathetic resonance. A deep, soft, golden boom emanated from it, not struck, but awakened. The sound filled the valley, not as a noise, but as a palpable vibration of peace. It was the first time the bell had sung in over 300 years. The monk did not ring the bell. His own inner clarity simply invited the bell to remember its own true voice. The Buddha's teachings often point to this principle of resonance. We spend our lives shouting at the world, striking at experiences, demanding that life give us peace, happiness, or answers. We use force, effort, and struggle. And like the travelers striking the ancient bell with stones, we meet only with a dull thud of disappointment. We conclude that peace is a myth, or that we are broken. But the wisdom path suggests a different approach. Cultivate an inner clarity, a still and steady tone within your own being. When your own mind is settled and your heart is open, the world begins to resonate with a harmony that was always available. You don't grab at joy, you become the vibration that invites joy. You don't chase peace, you become the stillness that echoes with peace. The right conditions are not about manipulating the external, but about purifying the internal. Your own sincere, clear presence is the hum that can awaken the music in the silent bells of your life. This leads us to a related, and vital, understanding, the nature of effort. If peace is not grabbed, then what is the role of our energy? Let us explore this through the tale of the mountain spring. High on a windswept peak, the source of a great river was a small spring that bubbled from a crack in the rock. The water was ice-cold and pure. From this spring, a tiny stream began its journey downward. At first, the stream was eager, rushing over rocks, trying to carve its path quickly to the valley below. It fought against every obstacle, splashing and frothing with effort. Because it was so frantic and dispersed, much of its water soaked into the dry ground or evaporated in the sun. Its progress was slow and exhausting. Further down the mountain, the stream noticed another trickle of water, moving with a strange, slow determination. This water did not rush. It did not fight. When it met a rock, it did not splash against it, it simply pooled, quietly, until it found the lowest, easiest path around the side, or patiently seeped through a tiny crack beneath. It moved with a persistent, gentle focus. It never seemed to hurry, yet it never stopped moving. Over seasons, the frantic stream, now weakened, observed that this patient trickle had, without fanfare, carved a deeper, smoother channel than it had. It had conserved its energy for the consistent, gentle work of flowing, not for the dramatic work of fighting. The frantic stream, in a moment of humility, slowed its own rush. It began to imitate the trickle's way. It pooled. It sought the path of least resistance while maintaining its downward intention. And something changed. It lost less water. It gained strength. It began to hum a quiet, contented sound as it flowed. It realized that its true purpose was not to conquer the mountain, but to flow down it. The effort was in the unwavering direction, not in the turbulent struggle. In Buddhism, this is the essence of right effort. It is not the harsh, teeth-gritting struggle of the ego trying to achieve a state. That is the stream splashing itself into exhaustion. Right effort is the persistent, gentle, and intelligent application of energy toward wholesome states. It is the patience to pull when you meet an obstacle, to find the wise way around or through, and to continue your flow toward freedom without wasting your life force on resistance and drama. It is the effort of the gardener who weeds consistently, not the builder who tries to lift a mountain in a day. Your practice, whether it is mindfulness, kindness, or patience. Is this gentle, persistent trickle? Do not measure your progress by how loudly you splash, but by the quiet, deepening channel of peace you are carving in the bedrock of your own being. Now, let me share a personal anecdote that mirrors this. For many years, my own meditation practice was like that frantic stream. I would sit with a fierce determination to become enlightened, to empty my mind, to achieve perfect stillness. Each thought was an enemy to be vanquished. Each session was a battle. I would rise from the cushion feeling more tense than when I sat down, judging myself a failure for my unquiet mind. The effort was immense, and the result was frustration. It was a wise teacher who one day said to me, "You are trying to drill for oil with a jackhammer. You will only shatter the rock and obscure the well. Use a gentle, persistent tap. Let the tool do the work." He was pointing me toward the way of the mountain trickle. I began to sit not to achieve, but simply to be present. The effort shifted from fighting my thoughts to gently, repeatedly, returning my attention to my breath. Some days the trickle was strong, some days it was barely a seep. But I stopped fighting the terrain. And over time, a long, gentle time, I felt a channel begin to form. A sense of ease, of being carried by the flow of awareness itself, began to replace the exhausting struggle. The peace was in the flowing, not in reaching some imaginary valley. This understanding naturally brings us to consider what we often see as obstacles. We view the rocks in our stream as problems. But what if they are essential? The rocks in the stream are not mere obstacles, they are what give the water its song. Without them, the flow would be a silent, featureless slide. The friction, the dance around and over, creates the melody of the stream's journey. In our lives, we often perceive challenges, delays, and difficulties as frustrating interruptions to our plans. We see them as mistakes in the script of how our life should go. But the wisdom of the Buddha invites a profound reframing. These are not errors in the design. They are the design. They are the necessary textures that shape our character, that deepen our understanding, that introduce us to parts of ourselves we would never meet on a perfectly smooth path. Let us explore this through a story of texture and transformation. In a village known for its exquisite pottery, there lived two apprentices. The first, Anya, was a perfectionist. She sought the purest, finest, most sifted clay. She would spend hours removing every pebble, every twig, every imperfection. Her wheel was perfectly balanced, her hand steady. She created bowls and vases of flawless symmetry, with surfaces as smooth as glass. They were technically impeccable, and the villagers admired them. Yet, there was something distant about them. They felt cold to the touch. They were perfect, but they had no story. The second apprentice, Leo, had a different method. He would gather his clay from the riverbank, accepting it as it came, flecked with mica, tiny stones, and organic matter. He would wedge it gently, not to purge these elements, but to integrate them. On the wheel, his pots would sometimes wobble as a small stone passed under his fingers. Instead of stopping, he would adjust, allowing the pot to find a new, unexpected balance. His glazes pooled in the tiny crevices around an embedded pebble, creating halos of color. His pots were never perfectly symmetrical. They bore the fingerprints of their making. They had weight, character. When you held one, your fingers would find a landscape of slight ridges and smooth valleys. People didn't just admire these pots, they felt something when they held them. They felt a warmth, a presence, a sense of history. They felt the truth of the earth in their hands. Anya, frustrated by the emotional connection people had to Leo's flawed work, once asked the master potter, "Why do they prefer his imperfect pots to my perfect ones?" The master placed one of Anya's smooth bowls into her hands, and then one of Leo's textured cups. "Close your eyes," he said. "Feel them. Your bowl speaks of a world without friction, a world that does not exist. It is an idea. Leo's cup speaks of a journey. It speaks of clay and stone and fire collaborating. It speaks of adaptability and acceptance. Its so-called flaws are a record of its honest becoming. People do not seek perfection, they seek connection. They seek the beauty of something real, something that has met resistance and incorporated it into its strength." The Buddha taught that life is dukkha, often translated as suffering, but perhaps more accurately as unsatisfactoriness or stress. A part of this stress arises from our own version of Anya's quest, our deep-seated desire for a flawless, smooth, permanent experience. We sift the clay of our lives, trying to remove every pebble of discomfort, every twig of uncertainty. We want the perfect relationship, the perfect job, the perfect state of mind. And when life inevitably presents us with grit, with loss, illness, change, or simple irritation, we see it as a ruinous impurity. We think our pot is ruined. But the Dharma, the truth of the way things are, suggests the way of Leo. The grit, the pebbles, the wobbles on the wheel are not impurities to be purged. They are the very materials that, when embraced and integrated, give our character its depth, its resilience, its unique beauty. Your anxiety, your past wounds, your quirks, these are not shameful flaws to be hidden. They are the mica flakes in your clay that will catch the light in a way no smooth surface ever could. The path is not about achieving a sterile perfection. It is about the courageous, compassionate integration of all that you are, to create a vessel that is authentically, ruggedly, beautifully you. This principle extends to how we meet the world. If our own perceived flaws are not enemies, then perhaps the flaws we see in others are not what we think either. This brings us to a story about reflection. There was a clear, deep pond in an ancient forest. The animals of the forest used it as a mirror. The proud stag would come to admire the spread of his antlers. The quick fox would check his sleek coat. The songbird would peer down to see the flash of her own bright feathers. Each saw their own reflection and was pleased. One day, a human traveler, weary and covered in the dust of the road, came to the pond to drink. As he knelt, he stirred up the silt from the bottom. The water became cloudy and turbulent. The animals gathered, distressed. Their mirror was ruined. They could no longer see themselves. They blamed the traveler. "Look what you've done. You have destroyed our pond with your clumsiness." The traveler, full of remorse, sat back and did nothing. He simply waited. As he waited, the silt began to settle. Slowly, the pond regained its clarity. But now, something was different. As the animals looked in, they did not see only their own reflections. The now still water, having integrated the stirred-up silt, acted as a better mirror. It reflected not just their forms, but the canopy of trees above, the sky, and each other standing at the water's edge. They saw themselves in context, as part of a whole, interconnected scene. The flaw of the stirred silt, when allowed to settle, had given them a deeper, truer vision. How often do we do this? We meet someone, or even a part of ourselves, that stirs up silt in our calm pond. They are angry, sad, confused, or simply different. Their energy disturbs our peace. Our immediate reaction is like the animals, to blame the disturbance on the clumsy one. You are ruining my calm. Your emotions are a problem. We want them to stop stirring, so we can get back to admiring our own isolated reflection. But the wisdom of Buddhism asks us to wait. To let the silt settle. To understand that the disturbance is not a permanent ruination, but a temporary mixing of realities. And if we have the patience not to react, not to blame, but to simply be present and allow the natural settling, we are granted a gift, a clearer, more compassionate vision. We see the other not as a flaw in our environment, but as part of a larger picture. We see their pain in the context of their journey. We see our own reaction in the context of our conditioning. The pond becomes a mirror of interdependence, not of isolated self-regard. The next time your peace is disturbed, by another or by your own inner storm, remember the forest pond. Do not blame the stirrer. Have the patience to let the waters settle. You may find that what returns is not just your old reflection, but a wider, wiser, more connected understanding. And what of the storms that feel too big to settle? What of the gales that seem to threaten our very roots? This calls for a story not of a pond, but of a very specific kind of tree. There is a tree that grows in the most desolate, wind-scoured places on the highest cliffs, where soil is sparse and storms are relentless. It is called the crumholes, the crooked wood. It does not grow tall and straight like a forest pine. From a distance, it looks stunted, twisted, almost crippled by the elements. Its branches grow predominantly in one direction, streamlined by the constant, punishing wind. To an eye that admires symmetrical, sheltered growth, the crumholes appears deformed, a testament to hardship. But come closer. Place your hand on its trunk. The wood is incredibly dense, hard as iron. Its roots, though shallow, are a vast, interlocked network that grips the bare rock with a tenacity that belies its size. Its low, sprawling form is not a failure to grow tall, but a masterful adaptation to survive, and even thrive, where nothing else can. It does not resist the wind. It learns its language. It shapes itself to the relentless force, becoming one with it, and in doing so, finds an unshakable stability. The very thing that seemed to distort it became the blueprint for its unique and rugged strength. We often harbor a secret belief that a spiritual or peaceful life is one that grows tall, straight, and untouched in a sheltered grove, free from life's harsh winds. We think enlightenment means the storms cease. But the Buddha's own journey was one of meeting the storm head-on, the storms of temptation, fear, and doubt, and finding an unshakable seat within the gale. The teaching is not that life will become calm, but that you can discover the crumholes within you. You can find that core of adaptability that does not break, but bends and learns and becomes resilient in the precise shape of your challenges. Your anxieties, your losses, your periods of doubt. These are not signs that you are failing on the path. They are the prevailing winds of your human experience. The practice is to stop trying to grow a sheltered grove life where one cannot exist, and instead, to consciously, wisely, shape your being into a form that can find peace within the conditions you are given. Your twists and turns are not deformities. They are the record of your dialogue with the wind, and the source of a profound, unbreakable strength that only such a dialogue can forge. This adaptability, this bending, is deeply connected to a central Buddhist concept, emptiness. This is not a bleak void, but a freedom. Let us explore this through a story of space. In a bustling city of tall stone towers, there lived an architect who was famed for designing the most solid, imposing, and intricate buildings. His structures were marvels of weight and substance. He believed that the value was in the stone, the marble, the density. One day, he was commissioned to design a pavilion for meditation in a royal garden. He designed his usual masterpiece, a heavy, ornate, domed structure. But when the royal sage saw the plans, he shook his head gently. "You have designed a tomb for silence," he said. "What we need is a cradle for the sky." Confused, the architect wandered the garden. He saw how the wind moved through the bamboo grove, how light danced in the open clearing, how the sound of water traveled freely. He sat for a long time, and a radical idea dawned on him. He returned with new plans. He designed a structure that was mostly space. Slender columns held a simple, wide roof. 3 of the 4 walls were merely screens of latticework, allowing air, sound, and light to pass through unimpeded. The floor was polished stone that reflected the sky. When it was built, people entered and were astonished. They did not feel they were in a building, but rather in a protected piece of the garden itself. The wind whispered through the lattice. Rain could be seen and heard on the other side of the screen. Sunlight patterned the floor. The space within the pavilion and the space outside were in constant conversation. The value of the pavilion was not in its solid walls, but in the quality of the space it created and connected to. It was defined not by its substance, but by its intelligent use of emptiness. The Buddha's teaching on emptiness, or sunyata, is akin to this. We spend our lives building ourselves into stone towers, solid identities. I am a successful person, I am a wounded person, I am this personality, these opinions, this story. We believe these solid structures are our safety, our self. But they are also what isolate us, what make the wind of change feel like a threat, and what eventually become tombs for our own fluid, alive awareness. Wisdom is the architectural shift of the pavilion. It is realizing that your true essence is more like the spacious, aware capacity within which thoughts, feelings, and identities arise and pass. It is the open, sky-like awareness, not the solid stone of a fixed self. The practice is to become less identified with the walls of your personality, and more identified with the open, clear, connective space of your presence. This does not make you vague or weak. It makes you profoundly adaptable, connected, and free. You become a pavilion for experience, not a fortress against it. The storms of emotion pass through you without destroying you, because you are not a brittle tower, but a structure designed for communion with the sky. Now, let me share a personal turning point that revolved around this idea. For years, I carried a story of myself as a person who could handle anything alone. It was a stone tower of pride and independence. When a period of profound helplessness came, a time when I needed help, emotionally and practically, that tower began to crack. I felt my identity, my very self, crumbling. I fought it, trying to patch the walls with more determination. The suffering was intense. One day, exhausted, I simply stopped building. In that surrender, I experienced not collapse, but a sudden, unexpected spaciousness. Without the rigid definition of the strong one, I was just present. Vulnerable, open, and surprisingly receptive. Help came, not because I demanded it, but because I was finally open enough to receive it. Connection flowed in through the lattice walls I had unknowingly built. I realized I had mistaken the prison of my self-image for my home. Letting it be less solid didn't leave me homeless, it allowed me to inhabit the whole garden. This openness leads us to consider what we let flow through that lattice. What is the quality of the communication between our inner space and the world? This brings us to the profound theme of intention, the seed from which all action grows. Every action, every word, begins as a whisper in the mind, a seed of intention. We often believe that our visible deeds are what define us, that the fruit is all that matters. But the Buddha pointed to the root, to the soil from which the fruit springs, the intention, or satana. He taught that karma is not blind fate, but is primarily volitional. It is the intentional choice behind an action that plants the seed for future experience. To understand this is to become a wise gardener of your own inner landscape. Let us explore this through a story about two gardens. In a village, there were two neighbors, each with an identical plot of land behind their cottage. The first neighbor, Finn, was a man of immediate results. He wanted flowers, and he wanted them now. He went to the market and bought the most beautiful, fully blooming plants he could find, their roots bound in burlap. He dug quick holes, placed them in the ground, and poured rich fertilizer around them. Within a day, his garden was a riot of color. He was proud. The second neighbor, Elara, worked differently. On the same day Finn bought his mature flowers, she bought small, plain packets of seeds. She spent days preparing the soil, turning it, removing stones, mixing in compost with care. She planted the tiny seeds in neat rows, watered them gently, and marked each row with a simple label. For weeks, Finn's garden was spectacular, while Elara's was just bare, brown earth with little markers. People praised Finn's thumb. They pitied Elara's empty plot. Then, a heatwave came. Finn's mature plants, with their shallow, disturbed root balls, struggled. They wilted despite daily watering. The fertilizer burned their roots. Within 2 weeks, his glorious garden was a cemetery of brittle stems and brown petals. Elara's seeds, however, had been quietly doing their work underground. Their roots were digging deep, seeking the moisture and nutrients in the well-prepared soil. When the heat came, they were resilient. Tiny green shoots broke the surface, then grew with steady vigor. By the season's end, Elara's garden was a lush, healthy, and thriving ecosystem of flowers, herbs, and vegetables that bloomed in succession. Finn's plot was barren. Our minds are these gardens. Finn's approach is like pursuing fleeting states of happiness through external gratification, forceful action, or immediate results. We plant the mature flower of a desired feeling, praise, pleasure, possession, without preparing the soil of our character. The bloom is spectacular but brief, and it cannot withstand the inevitable heat waves of life. It leaves behind exhaustion and barrenness. Ilara's way is the way of wise intention. It is patient, foundational work. The seeds are our daily intentions, the intention to be kind, even when irritated, the intention to be mindful, even when distracted, the intention to be honest, even when it's difficult. This work is invisible at first. It seems like nothing is happening. You may feel you are just sitting on bare earth while others boast colorful blooms of success. But you are tending the roots. You are preparing the deep soil of your heart through consistent, wholesome choices. When challenges arise, it is this deep-rooted character, grown from countless small, sincere intentions, that provides resilience, stability, and a lasting, authentic flourishing. Do not judge your path by the immediate display. Tend to the quality of your seeds and the care of your soil. The bloom will come from a place of unshakable strength. This cultivation requires a particular kind of attention to the present moment, not as a means to an end, but as the very field in which the garden grows. We so often flee the present, believing the real living is in the remembered past or the anticipated future. But there is a secret hidden in the now, which is the only place life actually occurs. Let us discover it through a story of a clockmaker. In a city where everyone was ruled by the loud, giant clock in the square, there lived a master clockmaker in a tiny, quiet workshop. He was known for repairing the most delicate and complex timepieces. People would bring him heirlooms that had stopped for decades. He had a unique method. He would not immediately open the watch. He would first place it on a velvet pad and simply listen. He would hold it to his ear, not for a second, but for minutes, sometimes hours, in utter silence. His apprentices were baffled. "What can you hear from a stopped watch?" they asked. He would smile and say, "I am not listening for the tick. I am listening for the silence between where the ticks should be. In that silence, the watch remembers its purpose. I listen until I can almost hear the ghost of its rhythm. Then, and only then, do I know where to gently apply my tool." One day, a man brought in the most complicated watch he had ever seen, a labyrinth of tiny gears. It was not just stopped, it was completely jammed. The clockmaker performed his ritual. He listened to its profound silence for a long afternoon. Finally, he opened the case. Instead of trying to force the mainspring or oil every gear, he went straight to a single, tiny, almost invisible pivot joint deep in the mechanism. With the lightest touch of his finest oiler, he placed one minuscule drop of oil on that joint. He closed the case, held it to his ear, and smiled. He handed it back to the man. The man, skeptical, held it to his own ear. A clear, steady, perfect tick-tock emanated from the watch. It was not just fixed, it kept more perfect time than it ever had. The present moment, the clockmaker explained to his apprentices, is not the tick or the tock. It is the silent, spacious pivot point between them. All the energy of the past tick flows into it, and all the potential of the next tock flows from it. It is the point of perfect balance and infinite possibility. Most people try to fix their lives by frantically working on the noisy gears of past actions or future worries. They force, they oil everything, they create a mess. But if you have the patience to be utterly present, to listen to the silent pivot of now, it will reveal the one, precise point of gentle adjustment needed. That one drop of mindful awareness in the present is more powerful than gallons of effort spilled in regret or anxiety. The Buddha's teaching of mindfulness is this clockmaker's art. It is not about adding more noise, more doing, more thinking. It is about cultivating the profound, listening attention to the present pivot point. In that silent, aware space, you discern with clarity what truly needs attention. A gentle release of clinging here, a kind thought there. From that place of balanced presence, action arises that is precise, effective, and harmonious. Your life begins to tick with a rhythm of ease, not because you've controlled all the gears, but because you've learned to listen to the silence that holds them all together. I recall a time when I was struggling with a difficult decision, swinging like a pendulum between the tick of one option and the talk of another, tormented by projections of the future and recriminations of the past. My mind was a jammed mechanism. A teacher, seeing my struggle, simply said, "Stop. Listen to the space between the choices." At first, it made no sense. But I sat. I let go of analyzing the pros and cons. I just sat in the silent anxiety of not knowing. And in that quiet, after the mental noise faded, a subtle, clear knowing arose, not a shouting thought, but a quiet inclination of the heart toward one path. It felt like that single drop of oil. The decision became clear, and acting on it felt effortless and right. The struggle had not been in the decision, but in my failure to inhabit the silent pivot point from which clarity naturally emerges. From this place of clear, present moment intention, we can look at one of the most challenging arenas of life, our relationships with others. How do we navigate the friction, the noise, the seeming clashes of different rhythms? For this, we need a story about harmony, not unison. Imagine an instrument you have never seen before, the glass harmonica. It was invented by Benjamin Franklin, and it consists of a series of glass bowls of varying sizes, nested on a spindle that rotates by a foot pedal. The musician touches the rims of the spinning glasses with wet fingers, producing ethereal, haunting notes that seem to come from another world. Now, imagine two novice players approaching this instrument. The first believes that to make beautiful music, she must control every note perfectly. She tries to force her fingers to produce a specific, preconceived melody. But the glasses, with their own resonant frequencies, resist her force. The notes screech or fall silent. Her effort creates dissonance and frustration. The second player approaches differently. She begins by simply listening. She rotates the glasses, touches them lightly, and discovers the unique, pure tone each bowl naturally produces. She does not try to make a small bowl sound like a large one. She accepts the inherent note of each. Then, she begins to explore how these different tones relate. She finds combinations where the vibrations complement and amplify each other, creating chords that are richer and more beautiful than any single note could be. Her music is not a forced melody, but a discovered harmony. She works with the nature of the instrument, not against it. Our relationships, with partners, family, friends, colleagues, are like playing the glass harmonica. We often enter them with a precomposed score in mind, how the other should behave, what harmony should sound like based on our own singular note. We try to force others to resonate at our frequency, to play our tune. When they naturally produce their own different tone, a different need, opinion, or emotional timbre, we hear it as dissonance, as a problem to be fixed. We press harder, trying to correct their pitch, and create only friction and painful noise. The Buddhist teaching of right relationship, rooted in compassion and understanding, is the way of the second musician. It begins with deep listening, to truly hear the fundamental note of another being, without immediately trying to change it. What is their inherent nature? What are their wounds, their joys, their unique shape? This listening requires the quieting of our own internal score. Then, it moves to exploration. How can my note and their note coexist? Can we find a third, harmonious chord that includes both, that is more beautiful for the combination? This isn't about compromise as loss, but about synergy as discovery. It requires flexibility, a willingness to adjust our touch, and the wisdom to know that harmony is not uniformity. The deepest connections are symphonies of distinct tones supporting each other, not solos accompanied by silence. This applies equally to the relationship with the different parts of ourselves. We have an inner critic, a joyful child, a fearful protector, a wise elder. We often try to silence the ones we deem unpleasant, to force the entire orchestra to play only happy, confident music. But this creates inner civil war. What if, instead, you became the compassionate conductor who allows every section to be heard, who listens to the need behind the note of anxiety, the message within the chord of sadness? Inner peace is not the silence of the orchestra. It is the skillful, harmonious integration of the entire ensemble. Sometimes, however, we are faced not with a different note, but with what feels like an outright attack, a deliberate clash. This calls for a story about a fortress that was never besieged. On a strategic plane, there stood a formidable fortress with towering walls, a deep moat, and well-stocked armories. Its lord was proud and vigilant, constantly expecting attack. Scouts were always on the horizon, looking for approaching armies. Soldiers drilled daily. The gates were kept shut. The people inside lived under a constant, low hum of preparedness for war. One day, a traveling sage asked for shelter. Noting the tense atmosphere, he asked the Lord, "Who is your enemy?" The Lord swept his arm toward the plains. "Any who would challenge me. I am ready for them." The sage stayed for a week, observing. As he left, he said to the Lord, "I see no enemy on the plains. But I see a great enemy within your walls. It has already conquered your peace, consumed your resources, and imprisoned your people in fear. Your enemy is the belief in the necessity of the siege." The Lord was struck silent. He walked his walls that night and saw not a protective barrier, but a cage of his own making. The constant preparation for an external threat had become the threat itself. Slowly, he began a great work. He did not tear down the walls, the world could still be uncertain. But he opened the gates during the day. He allowed traders and travelers to flow through. He turned some armories into storehouses for grain to share in times of famine. The fortress did not become weak. It transformed from a monument to fear into a hub of connection and resilience. The true strength was no longer in its defiance of a phantom enemy, but in its vibrant, open engagement with life. How many of us maintain such inner fortresses? We build high walls of defensiveness, dig moats of suspicion, and stockpile armories of resentment, all to guard against potential hurt, betrayal, or disappointment. We are in a state of perpetual, exhausting siege against life itself. The enemy, as the sage pointed out, is not out there. The enemy is the mindset of siege, the belief that openness is weakness and that vigilance must mean suspicion. Buddhism does not ask us to naively tear down all walls. Wisdom understands that boundaries can be healthy. But it asks us to examine the gatekeeper. Is he letting in fresh air? Is he allowing for exchange? Or has he, in his fear, sealed the gates so tightly that the interior is starving for connection and light? The practice is to consciously open the inner gates, to vulnerability, to trust, to new experience, not foolishly, but wisely, transforming the fortress of the ego into a welcoming city of the heart. This opening allows us to receive one of life's most misunderstood teachers, failure. We run from it, hide it, see it as proof of our fortress's inadequacy. But let us view it through a different lens, in a story about a master navigator. In an age of exploration, there was a navigator famed for his flawless voyages. His maps were precise, his landfalls exact. He was hired by a merchant king for the most important journey, to find a direct western route to the Spice Islands. The navigator planned meticulously. But weeks into the voyage, a storm of unprecedented fury blew them far off course for days. When the skies cleared, his instruments were damaged, and none of the stars matched his charts. They were utterly, hopelessly lost. The crew panicked. The navigator, however, did not see lost. He saw dislocated. He had a radical idea. He ordered the crew to sail not by the old maps, but by the new patterns of wind and current they observed, and by the behavior of the birds and marine life. It was terrifying, improvisational sailing. After many uncertain weeks, they did not find the Spice Islands. Instead, they sighted an entirely new continent, rich with resources unknown to their world. The failure of their original mission led to a discovery that reshaped history. We are all navigators on the ocean of our lives, with maps drawn from our past and our plans. When storms blow us off course, when we fail in a career, a relationship, a goal, we feel shattered, lost, adrift. We cling to the wreckage of the old map. But what if the purpose of the storm was not to punish you, but to dislocate you from a route that was, ultimately, too small for your destiny? The Buddha's teaching of impermanence, anicca, assures us that storms will come. The wisdom is in the navigator's response. Can you let go of the ruined chart? Can you have the courage to read the new signs, the subtle currents of intuition, the birds of inspiration, the stars of your deepest values, and sail into the unknown? The greatest discoveries of your spirit will never be found on the well-worn maps of your old conditioning. They lie on the other side of acknowledged failure, in the courage to be creatively, compassionately lost. That courage to sail into the unknown rests upon a fundamental trust, not in a specific outcome, but in the very nature of the journey itself. It is a trust that the ocean you sail upon, however turbulent, is ultimately supportive of life. This is not blind faith, but a confidence born from understanding the deeper currents. To explore this, let us consider the story of the wandering island. Sailors in a certain sea spoke in whispers of a mysterious, wandering island. It was never in the same place twice on any chart. Some said it was a mirage, others, a curse. A young, rational cartographer named Kieran disbelieved the tales. An island is rock and soil, he declared. It cannot wander. Determined to debunk the myth, he secured a ship and a crew brave enough to seek it. For months, they sailed precise grids, finding nothing. Frustration grew. One night, during a dead calm, a thick fog enveloped them. All instruments spun uselessly. The crew despaired of ever finding their way back to known waters. Exhausted and resigned, Kieran finally gave up his grid search. "Let the current take us," he sighed. "We are lost anyway." They lowered the sails and slept. In the morning, the fog had lifted. Before them, glimmering in the dawnlight, was the most beautiful island they had ever seen, lush, green, with sweet water and abundant fruit. They had found it not by seeking, but by ceasing to seek. As they explored, Kieran made a profound discovery. The island was not made of bedrock anchored to the sea floor. It was a vast, floating mat of intertwined roots and vegetation, a living entity that drifted slowly on the deep, warm currents of the ocean. It wandered because it was alive, and its life was in its journey. It was not lost. It was free. The island had always been there, but it could only be found by those who were willing to surrender their rigid maps and align with the deeper flow. We often approach our lives, our spiritual search, like Kieran with his grid. We have a precise map for happiness: achieve this, acquire that, become this person. We believe peace is a fixed coordinate. When our frantic searching yields only exhaustion and fog, we think we have failed. But the Buddha's path suggests that the peace we seek is not a fixed point. It is a quality of being that is alive and dynamic, like the wandering island. It cannot be pinned to a spot on the ego's map. It is found in the surrender to the deeper current of reality as it is, in the trust that lets go of forcing and allows itself to be carried by the present moment. Your true self is not a static statue to be uncovered, but a living, wandering island. Your stability comes not from being anchored to one fixed identity or goal, but from your deep, interconnected roots in the flow of life itself. When you stop seeking peace as a destination, you may find you are already floating upon its vast, supporting waters. This surrender is not passivity. It is an active, wise alignment. It is like the art of Aikido, where a practitioner does not meet force with force, but blends with the energy of an attack and redirects it harmoniously. Our next story is about such redirection. In a valley frequently battered by avalanches, two villages took very different approaches. The first village, Stonehold, built a massive, sloping wall of granite at the top of the valley to block the snow. It was a feat of engineering, a monument to their will. For a few years, it worked. Then, a historically heavy snowfall came. The wall held the snow back, but the pressure built and built until the entire structure shattered under the strain. The resulting avalanche, now mixed with millions of tons of shattered granite, utterly destroyed Stonehold. The second village, Willowbend, studied the mountain. They noticed the avalanches always followed certain channels, like riverbeds of air and snow. Instead of blocking, they planted vast, dense groves of willow trees and intricate, layered patterns across these channels and on the slopes. Willows are incredibly flexible and have strong, interlocking root systems. When the great snows came, the avalanche descended. But as it hit the first groves, the willows bent. They did not break. They slowed the snow, divided its force into 100 smaller streams, caught debris in their branches, and dissipated the energy until the snow settled harmlessly in the forest, nourishing the soil. Willowbend was saved, not by resistance, but by intelligent, flexible absorption. We face avalanches in life, waves of anger, grief, financial pressure, or social conflict. The instinct of the ego is the stone-cold way, to build a wall of denial, suppression, or aggressive opposition. We try to block the feeling, stop the change, defeat the other person. This may work for small things, but when the pressure of reality builds, the wall shatters, and we are buried under the compounded force of what we resisted. The Willowbend way, inspired by Buddhist wisdom, is different. It is the cultivation of flexible, resilient awareness. You plant the willows of mindfulness and compassion. When the avalanche of emotion comes, you do not stand rigid against it, saying, "I shouldn't feel this." You allow yourself to feel it fully, but you bend with it. You let it move through the groves of your awareness, where it is slowed, witnessed, and its energy is dissipated and understood. It settles, and in time, it even nourishes your growth. You remain rooted, but flexible. You survive not by being harder than the world, but by being more adaptable. This adaptability finds its ultimate expression in how we meet the end of things, the small endings of each day, and the great ending that awaits us all. Our culture fears endings, seeing them only as loss. But what if an ending is also a necessary release, a return? Consider the story of the sky lantern. Every year, in a certain village, there was a festival of release. At dusk, people would write on thin, rice paper lanterns a word representing something they wished to let go of. Worry, grudge, fear. They would then light a small candle suspended inside the lantern. As the air inside heated, the lantern would swell, tug gently at their hands, and then, when released, ascend into the darkening sky. For a time, it was a beautiful, glowing symbol of their burden, floating peacefully away. They would watch it until it was just a speck of light. And then, inevitably, the candle would burn down. The flame would extinguish. The lantern, its work done, would drift unseen back to the earth, to dissolve back into the elements. A child, witnessing this for the first time, cried when her family's lantern went dark. "It's gone. It died," she wailed. Her grandfather knelt beside her. "Look up," he said softly. "What do you see?" The child looked. The sky was now dotted with the lights of other lanterns, and behind them, the first stars were appearing. "The light of our lantern had a purpose," he said. "It carried our word up and away, until it was ready to return. Its ending made room for the stars to be seen. And its paper and bamboo will feed the soil for next year's rice. Nothing is lost. It is only changed." The flame returned to warmth, the paper to earth, the intention to the heart of the sky. The Buddha's teaching on impermanence is not a morbid focus on death, but a liberating recognition of this constant, sacred cycle of release and return. We cling fiercely to our lanterns. To our youth, our health, our relationships, our identities. We are terrified of the flame going out. But the practice is to learn the grace of the festival of release. To write our attachments on the lantern of understanding, to light them with the flame of awareness, and to let them go, watching with love as they ascend and transform. Their ending is not a tragedy, it is the fulfillment of their nature. And it makes room for the eternal stars of awareness to shine through. Your grief at an ending is natural, human. But beneath it, can you also sense the profound rightness of the return? Can you trust that what is released is not annihilated, but reintegrated into the wholeness of life in a new form? This trust is the deepest peace. We have journeyed through many landscapes, of the mind, the heart, and the spirit. We have sat with the sculptor, listened in the silent library, learned from the wandering island and the willow grove. Each story, each reflection, is a single facet of a vast, luminous truth. The Buddhist teachings are not a collection of rules, but a mirror held up to the nature of reality and our own minds. As we draw our shared exploration to a close, let us integrate these insights not as abstract concepts, but as lived wisdom, felt in the breath and the beat of the heart. Recall the image of the crumholes tree, shaped by the wind. Your character is not diminished by challenge. It is defined by a graceful, resilient dialogue with it. Remember the two gardens, one of instant, dazzling blooms, the other of deep, patient roots. Your lasting peace grows from the seeds of daily, wholesome intention, nurtured in the soil of mindful attention. Think of the clockmaker, listening to the silent pivot between ticks. Your clarity and right action emerge not from frantic doing, but from profound presence in the now. All these paths converge on a single, transformative realization: freedom is found in how you relate to experience, not in controlling the experience itself. You are the sky, not the weather. You are the librarian, not the frantic books. You are the clear, deep cistern, not the dependent fountain. This shift in identity, from the content of your life to the aware, spacious context holding it, is the essence of awakening. Let us cement this with one final, original story. The Vessel and the Ocean. A beautifully crafted clay vessel, proud of its elegant form and intricate glaze, sat upon a shelf. It believed its purpose was to be admired, to hold fine wine or rare oils. One day, a great tremor shook the shelf, and the vessel fell, rolling out the door, down a hill, and into the relentless surf of the ocean. It was terrified. The salty water was not the rare oil it was meant for. The pounding waves were a violent disrespect to its delicate form. It cried out against the chaos, sure it would be shattered. But the ocean was vast and patient. Wave after wave lifted and lowered the vessel, not with malice, but with the immense, rhythmic breath of the planet. The vessel, exhausted from fighting, finally went still inside. In that stillness, it noticed something. It was not filling with the ocean was flowing through it. As it bobbed, water would rush in one opening and out the other. It was not a separate object in the ocean. It had become a part of the ocean's breathing. Its very form, which it thought made it separate and superior, was now a conduit for the boundless. The salt water cleaned its glaze. The sun warmed its clay. It was no longer a vessel on a shelf, it was a vessel of the world. It had feared annihilation, but instead, it found its true, unimaginably vast purpose, to be an open channel for life itself. For so long, we are like that vessel on the shelf. We define ourselves by our form. Our personality, our achievements, our story. We believe our purpose is to hold something special, separate, and permanent. We fear the ocean of change, of loss, of uncontrollable experience. We think it will shatter us. But the Buddha's radical invitation is to let yourself roll off the shelf. To allow the ocean of impermanent, interdependent life to flow through you. Your heartbreak, your joy, your boredom, your inspiration, let them flow in and out. Don't cling to any as your permanent contents. When you stop identifying as the separate, fragile form, and start experiencing yourself as the open space through which the ocean of life moves, a miracle happens. You cannot be shattered, because you are no longer brittle clay. You have become the water. You have discovered that your true nature is not the vessel, but the boundless capacity that the vessel temporarily expresses. This is nirvana. Not a distant heaven, but the extinction of the separate self-illusion and the bliss of homecoming to the oceanic whole. This does not mean you neglect your form. The vessel must be cared for, the body and mind need kindness. But you care for it with the understanding that it is a temporary, beautiful expression of the ocean, not the master of it. So, how do you live from this understanding? You return, always, to the fundamentals of the path, now infused with this view. Walk with gentle attention. Be the clockmaker listening to the pivot of now. Act with wise intention. Plant the seeds of kindness and integrity in the garden of your moments. Relate with compassionate harmony. Be the musician who discovers chords with other unique notes. Meet difficulty with resilient flexibility. Be the willow that bends and absorbs the avalanche. Release endings with grateful grace. Be the one who watches the sky lantern complete its journey, making room for stars. And always, rest as the open vessel. Let the ocean of experience flow through you, knowing you are both the clay and the water, the wave and the depth. This path is walked one breath, one step, one conscious choice at a time. There is no need for grand gestures. The transformation is in the micro-moments, the pause before a reactive word, the gentle acknowledgement of a difficult feeling, the silent wish for the happiness of a stranger. As our time together in this spoken sanctuary ends, I invite you to carry one of these images with you. Let it be a gentle guide. When you feel tight, think of the willow. When you feel lost, remember the wandering island. When you feel burdened, envision the sky lantern. When you feel small, know you are the ocean in a vessel. If this journey of reflection has been a companion, a solace, or a spark, you are always welcome here at Monk's Moon Temple. By subscribing, you join a quiet community of fellow listeners, and you help keep this sanctuary of words illuminated for all who seek a moment of peace amidst the noise of the world. It is a simple, profound way to say that this inward journey matters. Thank you for the profound gift of your listening attention. It is in shared listening that wisdom whispers. May you walk gently. May you meet your own heart with kindness. May you see the seeds you are planting. May you bend gracefully in the wind. May you find the courage to sail uncharted waters. And may you rest, now and always, in the deep, knowing peace of your true nature. Go in peace.